Hey, what's up guys? Okay, so chapter 241's chapter is out, or at least the fan translated version is, and we actually get to see this big action sequence with Dante facing off against the Black Bulls. Now, because this chapter was actually mostly just action, there wasn't really a lot of dialogue going on between the bad guys and the good guys. So because of that, there's not really a lot to analyze from the chapter, which means this video is going to be a lot shorter than it usually is. And because of the fact that there's not really a lot to analyze, I'm just going to go over things as they come up in my head instead of just trying to go in the chronological order of the chapter. Now, even though I said there actually wasn't a lot to actually analyze from this chapter, I spent most of it myself when I was reading it, looking over Dante's reactions and just kind of like interpreting what they meant, especially when it came to Asta. And what I kind of got from it was that Dante, prior to meeting Asta during this fight, had no idea about him. Because, I mean, if you look at the beginning of the chapter when Asta's sending those anti-magic slashes at Dante seems completely surprised. He has no idea exactly what's going on with Asta's anti-magic abilities, because he tries to use his own magic, his gravity magic, in order to stop Asta's attacks, and when he realizes that doesn't work, he's forced to dodge them. And this is when he kind of picked up on the idea that Asta is able to cancel out his magic. And then later on in the fight, when we see Asta go into his dark form, Dante is completely caught off guard by that. He's completely surprised by the fact that Asta has demonic abilities, similar to him and the people from the Spade Kingdom. So we can tell just from this interaction that prior to meeting Asta in this fight, he was not aware of him. And you know what? If I'm being honest, I was kind of caught off guard by the fact that Dante was not aware of Asta prior to meeting him in this fight. Because I had assumed that at the very least Dante, being the leader of the Dark Triad and the ruler of the Spade Kingdom, was at least somewhat aware of the fact that there was someone inside the Clover Kingdom who had not only anti-magic abilities, but was also contracted to a demon, just like him and the Dark Triad are. Because of the fact that they obviously have some kind of insider information on the Clover Kingdom. That's how they would have to have known that basically Yami and William are both arcane stage mages. And given how kind of famous that has kind of become in the short time that he's been a Black Bull, and not to mention just a few months prior to this fight, the news was spread throughout the entire Clover Kingdom that Asta was being put on trial for having connections to demons. So you would think that if the Spade Kingdom has some kind of intelligence or some kind of way of gathering information inside the Clover Kingdom, that the Dark Triad would have been aware of Asta and the fact that he is somehow connected to a demon, possibly having some kind of similar contract to the Dark Triad's contract to their demons. But apparently no, apparently they actually had no idea about Asta prior to meeting him at this moment. And you know what, I wouldn't be surprised if Dante actually takes a little bit of an interest in Asta now. In fact, after reading this chapter and reading the way Dante kind of like is caught off guard and actually kind of reacts to the movements or the actions that the Black Bulls take throughout the entire chapter when they're fighting him, I wouldn't be surprised if Dante and the Dark Triad now kind of take a little bit of an interest in the Black Bulls. Because, I mean, if we really sit down and think about each member of the Black Bulls, we have Asta, who has anti-magic and is technically contracted to a demon. We have Yami, who has a very, very, very rare dark attribute. We have Henry, who has weaponized his own curse. We have Charmy, who is a half-dwarf, half-human hybrid. Obviously Vanessa, who in the last chapter Dante had already confirmed was an arcane stage mage due to her abilities with Rogue to rewrite fate. And then there's also Gray, who earlier on in the series, they kind of foreshadowed the fact that her use of transformation magic is very, very unique only to her. I mean, really, if you sit down and think about it, the only normal members of the Black Bulls are kind of just Magna, Luck, and Finral. Not to, throw them under the bus, they're each incredibly strong in their own right, but their magic abilities aren't anything that's really unique. And when it comes to Noelle and Zora, you can kind of argue one way or the other which category they kind of fall into, whether they're unique or whether they're normal. I would kind of lean, at the very least, with Zora into the more unique, just because of the fact that we have yet to see anyone else in the series use trap magic in the way that he does. And you know what, speaking of going after, I'm pretty sure after the last chapter when Dante kind of identified Vanessa as being, or at least the person who's able to use Rogue's powers as being an arcane stage mage, we all kind of assumed that he would end up going after Vanessa as well as Yami. And after the fact that he came face to face with her in this chapter, I feel like that's kind of foreshadowing the fact that she's most likely going to end up getting kidnapped. Now, it is kind of interesting that instead of going after her for the same reason that he's going after Yami, he does kind of decide that he's going to take her as his wife. And you know what? If Vanessa actually does end up getting taken by the end of this, and Dante's actually serious about wanting her as a wife instead of wanting to use her for whatever ritual or whatever plan they have for the arcane stage mages, then this could actually put her in a position to end up finding out exactly what their plan is and what they're trying to do. Alright, so finally I actually kind of want to talk about the fight before we end the video. So when I was reading this fight of Asta going up against Dante, not even including what the Black Wolves were doing to help out Asta, but when I was just watching the fight between Asta and Dante in this chapter, it kind of reminded me of the fight between Gon and Hisoka back in Hunter x Hunter, just after Gon learned how to use Nen for the first time. Because, I mean, if you look back to that fight, you can see that Gon's pulling out all these tricks and he's doing everything he can to land a single punch on Hisoka. And the entire time, Hisoka's honestly not really taking the fight that seriously. And you can tell he's not really taking the fight seriously, and that if he would take it seriously even for a moment, he would completely destroy Gon. And you get that same kind of feeling when you see Asta fight off against Dante in this chapter. When the two of them are going at it, you see Asta pulling out a lot of tricks and a lot of stops going up against Dante. But it doesn't seem like at any point Dante's really taking the fight all that seriously. Even when Asta goes into his dark form, you can still tell that Dante's not really that serious about the fight. And a prime example of the fact that Dante's not taking this fight seriously is the fact that not once in the last chapter or in this chapter did we actually see him activate his dark form. Now, we already know that each of the Dark Triad members can use up to 80% of their demon's power. And we already saw a few chapters ago that when Zeno activated up to 55% of that power, that's when his dark form took place. Now, assuming that Dante and Zeno are, around the same power level, most likely Dante being the leader of the Dark Triad is a little bit stronger than him, that would mean that Dante's dark form will probably take place at the same, level, around like 55%. Now, given the fact that he's not even in his dark form yet, he's still in his base form, that would mean that he's not even fighting against Asta, who is using his dark form right now, at even 55% of his power. So I mean, once Dante ends up taking it up to the full 80% when he gets actually serious about this fight, then Asta and the Black Wolves really won't stand that much of a chance. Now, that being said, there are still a few variables out there that we haven't really, factored into the fight just yet, and that being obviously the fact that Magna and Zora are still hanging around the area somewhere. The two of them could eventually show up and back out the rest of the Black Wolf members, and with Zora's trap magic being able to deflect attacks back at his opponent, it might come in handy. But then again, Dante's attacks aren't usually that physical since he has gravity magic, so I don't really know how Zora's magic is actually going to work against him, but still, at least there's a little bit more firepower on their side. And then when you add Yami into the mix, because eventually him and Finral are going to show up, they will possibly have more of a chance of defeating Dante. And I mean, there's also the possibility that we haven't seen the exact full extent of Asta's powers post the time skip, because so far in every fight that he's been in after the time skip, we've only seen him use abilities, or at least a more advanced version or more controlled versions of abilities that he had prior to it. So who knows if he gained any new abilities or any new transformations after 2.5 year training in the Heart Kingdom. If he did, then that actually could give them the advantage against Dante, even if he goes at his full 80%, with the rest of the Black Wolves, including Yami, Magna, and Zora, backing him up. Now, before I end the video, I do want to quickly talk about that combo move that Gout and Asta used at the end of the chapter. I actually really like that move. I like the idea of Gout creating multiple versions of Asta in his black form, and him using Black Meteorite, multiple versions of that, going straight at Dante. And you know what, I actually kind of had the idea that it would actually be kind of cool to see Gout do the same thing, but more like spread out and more like surrounding Dante. Kind of like how Piccolo used Hellzone Grenade. Something like that with Asta's dark form and his Black Meteorite would be extremely cool to see. But anyway, guys, that's it for the video. Look out for next week, because next week's chapter we're going to get a color covered page, and the first page is actually going to be colored as well, so be excited for that. But that's it for the video, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and I will catch you guys next week. Peace.